Laura had always taken her responsibilities seriously, pouring her heart into everything she did. Her job as a concierge at the luxurious St. Arcadia Hotel in downtown Chicago demanded both charm and discretion. Over the years, she had cultivated a reputation for going the extra mile to ensure every guest felt truly looked after. She had guided visiting families to the best pizza in town, arranged romantic rooftop dinners for newlyweds, and even managed to track down a lost puppy for a tearful little girl whose family was on vacation. She rarely took a day off and rarely complained. Though the long hours left her exhausted, it was worth it to see the smiles on guests' faces. The general manager, Mr. Davenport, was a firm believer in the hotel's exclusivity and decorum. So long as Laura maintained her polite, professional manner, she had his full support. She believed she was secure in her position, and in many ways, St. Arcadia felt like her second home. Before we start, hit the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. Late one evening, when the lobby was quiet except for the soft hum of subdued conversation and the hush of classical music playing overhead, everything changed. Laura had been working her usual shift, checking on guests' questions about transportation and dinner reservations. A hush fell over the already calm space when the doors opened and in walked Taylor Swift, flanked by a couple of individuals who appeared to be security guards. Laura was taken aback for just a moment, but her training kicked in quickly. She greeted Taylor with a courteous smile, introduced herself, and asked if there was anything she could do to make her stay more comfortable. Taylor, looking a bit weary but still gracious, explained that she was here for a short stay after a concert across town. She just wanted a quiet, stress-free evening away from crowds or media. The last-minute reservation, it turned out, had been made under an alias to preserve her privacy. Laura assured Taylor and her team that their privacy was her top priority. She discreetly guided them to the elevator, explaining the amenities of the penthouse suite without raising her voice. She noticed how tired Taylor's eyes looked and felt a surge of empathy. Laura had grown up listening to Taylor's music, humming Love Story in her teenage bedroom and dancing around to Shake It Off with her best friend. Yet she kept all of that admiration hidden behind a professional exterior. She wanted Taylor to sense she was in good hands. Once Taylor was settled in, Laura returned to her desk, feeling that familiar sense of satisfaction. Little did she know that this celebrity's presence would catapult her into the toughest dilemma of her career. After a short while, one of Taylor's security guards came down to the lobby looking unusually flustered. "We've got a bit of an issue," he said, trying to maintain a low voice. He explained that some paparazzi had followed their car to the hotel. Even though the staff had done everything possible to keep the reservation hidden, the photographers were lingering around the building's entrances, hoping for a shot. Taylor had specifically wanted a calm place to unwind, so the last thing she needed was a swarm of cameras. Laura listened carefully and determined that perhaps an inconspicuous side exit and a private vehicle could be arranged if Taylor wished to leave for dinner without being seen. She knew this was pushing the boundaries of her regular duties, but that was what she did. She went above and beyond. She just had to make sure Mr. Davenport wouldn't be annoyed that she was taking such liberties. Mr. Davenport had always been clear about one thing. The St. Arcadia prided itself on exclusivity and not meddling in guests' personal affairs. Still, Laura reasoned that helping a guest elude paparazzi to preserve their peace seemed aligned with the spirit of the hotel's discretion. She even suggested that her brother, who sometimes helped out as a chauffeur for a private car service, might drive Taylor to ensure the utmost secrecy. The security guard seemed relieved, thanked her profusely, and went back upstairs to check with Taylor. Meanwhile, Laura found a moment to speak quietly with Mr. Davenport, hoping to get his approval for this unorthodox arrangement. He was busy on the phone, seemed half listening, half preoccupied, and gruffly nodded that he trusted her to handle any potential crisis. That was all the green light she needed. An hour later, things became more complicated. Taylor herself approached the front desk in a simple gray sweatshirt and jeans, with only one security guard trailing behind her. She apologized for the inconvenience of all the secrecy and said she appreciated Laura's efforts. Then she softly asked if it would be possible for Laura to personally come upstairs for a moment and help with another favor. Laura glanced around, then noticed Mr. Davenport was locked in his office, presumably handling some managerial tasks. She agreed and followed Taylor to the elevator, ascending to the penthouse suite. Up there, the windows stretched from floor to ceiling, revealing a glittering cityscape. The bright lights of Chicago glowed below, but Taylor's expression was tinged with stress. Taylor explained that she wanted to send a gift to a fan staying in the hotel, someone she had recognized in the lobby who had come to see her concert and was at the same hotel by chance. She was worried about causing a scene if she simply wandered the halls looking for the fan or if the staff discovered she was delivering gifts. She looked at Laura hopefully as though she trusted her. Laura, not wanting to disappoint, happily agreed to help. She ran down to the storage closet to pick up a small gift bag and some tissue paper, carefully wrapped the special signed merchandise Taylor wanted to give away, then discreetly slid it under the door of the fans' room with a short handwritten note that Taylor penned right there in the suite. Laura's heart pounded with excitement, thinking about how amazing it must feel for the fan to open the door and find that unexpected treasure. She was, at her core, a deeply empathetic person who adored the joy such an act of kindness could bring. When Laura finally returned to the front desk, Mr. Davenport was standing there with his arms crossed, looking decidedly unhappy. He asked where she had been for so long. Laura tried to explain. She kept her voice down, not wanting to draw attention. She mentioned that Taylor had requested her help with a personal errand, but Mr. Davenport cut her off, reminding her that the St. Arcadia had strict regulations about employees fraternizing with celebrity clients, and that such involvement could compromise the hotel's carefully managed image. Laura felt her cheeks flush, but she calmly responded that it was merely a small gesture to maintain the guest's privacy. A slight flicker of annoyance passed across his face, but he said nothing further. She noted the tension building in the air, and a foreboding sense of unease settled in her stomach. For the remainder of the evening, Laura went about her usual responsibilities, welcoming late-arriving guests, making sure housekeeping was scheduled, finalizing tomorrow's spa appointments, while trying not to worry. Occasionally her eyes flicked to Mr. Davenport's office, where she noticed him on the phone speaking in hushed but urgent tones. She hoped he wasn't blaming her for anything. Still, she found some solace in the knowledge that she had done a kindness for someone who deserved a moment of peace. She convinced herself that things would blow over and be forgotten by morning. Early the next day, the trouble truly began. Laura arrived at the hotel to find that a tabloid journalist had obtained images of Taylor entering and exiting through the side entrance. The pictures weren't extremely revealing, but they were enough to prove that the hotel staff had helped her slip out unnoticed. The article implied that the hotel may have been complicit in assisting Taylor in avoiding media, an angle that would ordinarily be a badge of honor for a high-end establishment. But Mr. Davenport did not see it that way. His phone had been ringing incessantly, and when he summoned Laura to his office, the look on his face said it all. He felt that the St. Arcadia's reputation was at stake. He accused Laura of stepping out of line, of taking initiatives without clarifying with upper management. She tried to articulate her reasons, explaining she acted purely to preserve the guests' privacy. But Mr. Davenport claimed she had jeopardized the hotel by ignoring the official guidelines for handling VIPs. She was stunned when he declared that her employment was being terminated. No second chances, no official warnings. After all her years of loyal service, she felt blindsided by this sudden enforcement of a rule she had always believed was fluid. In her view, going above and beyond was precisely what made the St. Arcadia special. But Mr. Davenport insisted that he had been receiving angry calls from investors who were concerned about the negative publicity. Laura argued that any real negative publicity was nowhere to be found. The tabloids were always sensational, and the article itself was fairly tame, only stating that Taylor Swift had managed to maintain a low profile. But Mr. Davenport refused to see it that way. Before she could fully process it, she was cleaning out her desk and trudging to the elevator, tears stinging her eyes. She dedicated years of her life to this hotel, yet she was gone in a blink because she had tried to help someone. She didn't mention it to Taylor, who was still in the penthouse suite, unaware of the drama unfolding downstairs. Laura didn't see any reason to upset Taylor's day. Besides, she was in shock, not yet thinking rationally about what had just happened. She turned in her uniform, gathered her personal belongings, and left with as much dignity as she could muster. On the sidewalk outside, she collapsed onto a bench, tears streaking her cheeks. She wondered how she would break this news to her parents, who had always been proud of her stable job. She also felt a pang of regret, though not for helping Taylor. She regretted trusting that the hotel would have her back when push came to shove. Her heart ached, and she felt an overwhelming sense of injustice. The day stretched on in a blur, with her trudging back to her small apartment on the outskirts of the city. The emptiness in the living room mirrored the emptiness in her chest. Bills were lined up in a neat row on her desk, mocking her with each glance. Her life was about to be thrown into chaos. Rent, groceries, insurance. Everything depended on her salary. She sank onto her couch, trying to stifle her emotions, but the tears came again. She vacillated between anger, sadness, and a tiny glimmer of pride that she had done the right thing for Taylor. Still, that pride didn't pay the bills. She worried she might have made a grave mistake. In a whirlwind, her entire identity as the dedicated concierge of St. Arcadia had vanished. That evening, she tried to clear her head by taking a walk. The winter air in Chicago was crisp, biting at her cheeks and fingertips. She tucked her gloved hands into the pockets of her coat, gazing at the lights in the sky. The next day, she told herself, she would begin the daunting task of finding new employment. She had an impressive resume, but the hotel industry was competitive, especially at her level. She doubted any top-tier hotel would risk hiring someone they perceived as too close to the guests. She hoped Mr. Davenport wouldn't blackball her with negative references. Lost in her swirling thoughts, she almost forgot how this had begun. A chance to help someone whose music had shaped many people's lives, including her own. She finally returned to her small apartment, locked the door, and let fatigue lull her into a dreamless sleep, uncertain of what tomorrow might bring. When the sun rose, Laura woke up to a world that felt harsh and unwelcoming. She tried to steel herself for the day, making a mental list of tasks. She would tweak her resume, make phone calls, and prepare herself for potential interviews. Just as she began to search online listings, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was from a friend who worked in PR, someone who sometimes connected VIPs to the St. Arcadia. The message read, "Have you checked social media? You're going viral." Laura blinked in confusion, clicked through to her friend's link, and was stunned to see her own name and photo trending. She had no idea how her face had made it onto the internet so quickly, but there it was, a story recounting how a St. Arcadia concierge had been fired for helping Taylor Swift. This time, however, the narrative was anything but negative. People were outraged on her behalf. The fan who received the gift from Taylor had apparently shared the story on a fan forum. That story then snowballed, picking up steam on Twitter, Instagram, and entertainment blogs. According to the fan's post, Laura was a hero who had risked her job to deliver a precious signed gift from Taylor. Others chimed in with stories of how Laura had helped them in extraordinary ways at the hotel over the years, booking last-minute wedding venues, upgrading honeymoon suites, reuniting lost items with frantic guests. She had built a quiet legacy of kindness, and now the internet was rallying around her. Within hours, #Justice for Laura was trending. Suddenly, her phone was exploding with notifications. Strangers from across the country were sharing their anger toward St. Arcadia for what they saw as an unjust firing. A wave of messages offering moral support and job leads started flooding in. Laura sat on the edge of her bed, phone in hand, overwhelmed and teary-eyed. She had never wanted this kind of attention. She had been just a tiny cog in the hospitality machine, and yet these strangers were outraged on her behalf, sending her words of encouragement. Some told her that kindness should never be punished. Others said they had canceled their reservations at the St. Arcadia in protest, vowing never to set foot in a place that fired an employee for being compassionate. Laura's head was spinning. Then came the biggest shock of all. As she scrolled through her Twitter feed, she saw a tweet from Taylor Swift herself. It read, "Heard about the amazing concierge who went above and beyond. If anyone knows how to contact Laura from St. Arcadia, please send her my love and thanks. She deserves better. #West End with Laura." Laura nearly dropped her phone. Her heart raced. The mention of her name by Taylor Swift was surreal. Almost instantly, her notifications doubled. People tagging her newly created account, or any account that might be hers. Media outlets were reaching out, wanting interviews. She had no idea what to do. She was touched and terrified at the same time. She had never courted fame, never once thought her life could become so public. She had no PR background, no agent, nothing. All she had was the humble sense that she had done the right thing for a tired superstar and a loyal fan. Within a few hours, local television stations began calling, asking if she would be willing to share her story. She received emails from journalists with national papers who wanted quotes. It felt like she was in the eye of a storm, battered by demands from every side. Meanwhile, her parents called, frantic about the news stories popping up left and right. They had always known her to be a conscientious worker and were shocked that she had been fired. Still, they were proud that she had stayed true to her values. She had to reassure them that she was all right. But in truth, she was navigating unknown territory. A part of her wanted to crawl under her blankets and hide, but she recognized that maybe this was her chance to land on her feet. Then an email arrived from a well-known PR firm. They were offering pro bono assistance for a few weeks, simply because they believed in her story. They said they wanted to help her manage this sudden wave of attention, guide her through interviews, and protect her from being overwhelmed. Laura hesitated, but something told her she might need help to handle the paparazzi who were already starting to linger outside her apartment building. Taking a deep breath, she replied that she would appreciate any support. Moments later, she got a phone call from them, a warm voice offering reassurance. They discussed how she could navigate the next steps, including a potential interview on a popular daytime talk show that had already reached out. She was still reeling when her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an unknown number. She hesitated, then picked up. The voice on the line introduced himself as Anthony, Taylor Swift's publicist. He explained that Taylor was deeply appreciative of Laura's kindness and wanted to extend an invitation for her to be a VIP guest at an upcoming concert with a personal meet and greet. He also hinted that a bigger surprise might be in the works, but he was not at liberty to share all the details yet. Laura felt a swell of gratitude, her chest tight with emotion. She never expected anything in return for doing the right thing, but this gesture touched her heart. The next day, she found herself on a morning talk show, albeit through a virtual interview from her living room. She was nervous, her hands trembling as she tried to keep her voice steady. The hosts were sympathetic, gently asking her to recount what had happened. Laura tried to stay composed as she explained her usual duties at the hotel, how Taylor Swift had arrived, how the paparazzi swarmed, and how she had made every effort to ensure Taylor's privacy. She also mentioned the gift for the fan and how she hadn't realized that one small act could cost her everything. The interview ended with messages of support from the hosts, and a promise that, if anyone knew of job opportunities for such a caring individual, they would share them widely. Later that afternoon, her new PR contact called with some staggering news. Several prestigious hotels had reached out to them, all expressing interest in offering Laura a position. They felt that having her on staff, a concierge who had become a symbol of kindness, would be a public relations win. Laura was almost speechless. She went from worrying that no one would hire her to having multiple offers in less than 24 hours. She even got an inquiry from a luxury resort group in Dubai, praising her exceptional service ethic. It was as though the universe had spun on its axis overnight, tilting everything in her favor. She felt gratitude coursing through her veins, a renewed belief that doing the right thing would eventually lead to something good. But that wasn't the end of the day's surprises. Just as she was about to close her laptop, a direct message arrived on Twitter. It was from Taylor Swift herself. The message was kind, offering words of encouragement, thanking Laura for her extraordinary help, and praising her for her bravery in standing up for her beliefs. The final line read, "I've spoken with my team. We'd love for you to join us on tour for a while if you're interested, not as a tour manager, but in a special capacity, helping coordinate fan experiences. Your warmth and compassion would be a perfect fit." Laura's breath caught in her throat. She reread the message several times, ensuring she hadn't misread it. Could she actually have an opportunity to travel with Taylor Swift, creating memorable moments for fans? Emotions overwhelmed her, but she quickly responded, expressing her surprise and enthusiasm. The idea of traveling across the country, perhaps even internationally, and being part of an event that brought people so much joy was enticing. She loved the hospitality industry, but she'd never imagined stepping outside of the traditional hotel setting. And certainly she never thought she would be corresponding with Taylor Swift about job opportunities. A new wave of uncertainty washed over her. Did she have the skill set for a role like this? She reminded herself that she had learned so much on the job at the St. Arcadia, not just about scheduling and event organization, but about human connection. Perhaps that was exactly what Taylor saw in her. Taylor's team followed up quickly with formal details. They wanted to have a phone call to discuss what this role would entail, including ensuring VIPs, contest winners, and special guests had a smooth, magical experience. A lot of it involved coordinating meet and greets, organizing backstage tours, handling discrete logistical challenges that might pop up. In essence, it was a specialized hospitality role, perfect for someone whose talent lay in making people feel genuinely cared for. After reading through the preliminary outline, Laura was certain she wanted to take this leap. She scheduled a call for the next morning, still feeling as though she was living in a dream. Before going to bed that night, she received one more bit of news. The St. Arcadia had released a public statement attempting to clarify their stance on her termination. They claimed they fired Laura because she breached hotel policy and put the establishment at risk. However, the public backlash was swift and relentless. People flooded the hotel's social media pages with criticisms, one after another, demanding they apologize. In a remarkable turnaround, Mr. Davenport reached out to her privately, asking if she would consider returning to the St. Arcadia in a more senior role, with a pay raise. He pointed out that the entire incident had been blown out of proportion. Laura paused, reading his message carefully. The old Laura might have considered it, but now she felt that door had closed. She politely declined. She no longer wanted to be at a place where compassion could be so easily twisted into a liability. When morning arrived, Laura woke up feeling a sense of renewed purpose. She dialed into the call with Taylor Swift's team, which included Taylor herself for a few minutes. They expressed gratitude for her kindness, and Taylor personally recounted how much that night at the hotel had meant to her during a rough patch in the tour. She said Laura's unwavering dedication to kindness resonated with her. They discussed the details of a contract that would allow Laura to join the upcoming leg of the tour. Her official title would be Fan Experience Coordinator, a role designed to ensure the highest quality interactions for special guests, charity visits, and any behind-the-scenes experiences. Laura felt her heart leap. It was beyond anything she could have dreamed. They concluded the call by agreeing to finalize paperwork later that week. In the days that followed, the story continued to ripple through media outlets. Laura did a few more interviews, each time emphasizing the lesson she hoped the world would take away. Genuine kindness, empathy, and the willingness to protect someone's privacy should not be penalized. People rallied behind her, and she found herself receiving letters, emails, and messages from fans who were touched by her story. She spent time responding to as many as she could, humbled by the outpouring of support. Meanwhile, she started planning her move. The tour would kick off in 2 weeks, so she needed to sort out her apartment lease. She arranged for her friend to sublet while she traveled, gathered essential items she would need for life on the road, and tried to mentally prepare for this huge shift. It was a whirlwind, but an exhilarating one. During these preparations, she was reminded of how quickly one's life can change. Less than a week ago, she was sobbing on a bench outside the hotel, convinced she'd thrown her livelihood away. Now she had job offers, a supportive online community, and the chance to work closely with one of the biggest pop stars in the world. She felt a surge of gratitude for the unpredictability of fate. On a crisp, bright day, she finally met Taylor Swift in person outside the hotel context. They arranged to have coffee in a cozy little cafe near the musician's rehearsal space. Taylor arrived, dressed casually in a hoodie and sunglasses, but quickly took them off once they were seated. She gave Laura a warm hug. It felt surreal to be greeted like an old friend. They chatted about everything: music, the hectic schedule of a worldwide tour, the joys of making someone's day. Laura admitted she was nervous about transitioning into the music industry from hospitality. Taylor reassured her that good hospitality was exactly what the role required. Caring for people was universal, whether it happened in a hotel lobby or backstage at a stadium. The meeting solidified Laura's resolve. She signed her contract that afternoon, officially stepping into her new role. A press release went out announcing that she was joining the tour team. Almost immediately, social media buzzed with excitement. Fans were ecstatic to see an everyday individual recognized for her kindness and given such an opportunity. Laura's parents, who had been initially worried, couldn't contain their pride. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Laura realized she had not just found a new job, but also a new sense of self. She was no longer just the reliable background figure at the St. Arcadia. She was someone who had proven that compassion could shift the tides of her life in an unimaginable way. A week later, she boarded a plane for the first stop of the tour. As she settled into her seat, she reflected on the magnitude of what had happened. Just days ago, she had lost everything she believed was crucial: her job, her routine, her sense of stability. Yet, out of that chaos came a wave of support and new horizons she never thought possible. She remembered the final glance she exchanged with Mr. Davenport as she left the hotel. She wondered if he regretted his decision. Possibly. But she had no space in her heart for bitterness. Instead, she focused on gratitude. For Taylor, for the fans, for every single person who voiced support, and for her own courage to do what felt right. When she arrived at her destination, she was greeted by some of Taylor's team, who whisked her off to the stadium. It was enormous, a towering structure that would soon be filled with tens of thousands of fans. The magnitude of it struck her, but she felt an undercurrent of excitement rather than fear. She spent her first afternoon meeting the different departments: stage crew, lighting, sound, security, costume, and many more. In each small group, she could see how passion fueled their work. They might have different tasks, but they all cared deeply about creating an unforgettable show. She introduced herself, explaining that she'd be handling fan experiences. Most people already knew who she was. Some joked that she was the most famous concierge ever. She blushed but laughed along. There was a sense of camaraderie in this environment that energized her. Over the next days, she delved into her tasks, learning how to coordinate schedules, manage backstage passes, and handle each new challenge as it arose. Some fans were there through charity organizations, some had won contests, and others were special guests with unique stories. Laura's role was to ensure they felt welcomed and cherished. She arranged for them to meet Taylor, escorted them around the stage setup, and often found small ways to make each interaction personal. She'd take note of a fan's favorite lyric or significant life event, then surprise them with a small gesture or a warm comment from Taylor. Her hospitality training kicked in seamlessly. She took joy in noticing the little details, just like she did at the hotel, only now on a massive scale. She thought often about how her entire life had pivoted. Each day presented new challenges: tighter timelines, bigger crowds, and a heightened level of attention. Despite it all, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She was making a real difference, not just in ensuring a smooth event, but in touching people's lives. Seeing the look of wonder on someone's face when they met Taylor for the first time, or hearing the shrieks of joy when they were led backstage, gave her the same rush she had felt delivering that gift to the fan at St. Arcadia. She recognized that her calling wasn't bound to one building or one job description. Her calling was to spread warmth and kindness wherever she could. As the first show ended and the stadium slowly emptied, she sat down for a moment in one of the seats, looking out at the empty stage lights. Her life had transformed so drastically in such a short time. She'd lost a job she once considered essential to her identity, but she had found a new path that felt even more aligned with her values. The exhaustion of the day tugged at her, but so did a sense of awe. She pulled out her phone to check her messages, finding a flood of support still pouring in. She responded to as many as possible, each time feeling a pang of gratitude. She no longer felt like the world was harsh and unwelcoming. In fact, she felt as if, despite the turmoil, the world had embraced her decision to stand up for kindness. As the tour continued, she found herself traveling across different cities, each with its unique charm. She encountered fans from various backgrounds, each with a story about how Taylor's music influenced their lives. And in the midst of coordinating schedules, dealing with last-minute changes, and ensuring security protocols, she found her own story unfolding in unexpected ways. She became friends with the crew, forging bonds over shared late-night meals and early call times. Occasionally, she would sit down with Taylor for a cup of tea before a show, chatting about life, gratitude, and the whirlwind that had brought them together. It felt surreal, but also strangely natural. She often reminded herself of the fateful night she met Taylor in the hotel lobby. That moment of kindness, an impulse to protect someone's privacy and foster a special connection between artist and fan, had set off a chain reaction. She lost her job, yes, but the next day, everything had changed. It was as though the universe decided to reward what had once seemed like a grievous mistake. She couldn't help but marvel at how swiftly one's circumstances could shift. If she had learned anything from this roller coaster experience, it was that no act of kindness is too small, and sometimes the greatest risks carry the most beautiful rewards. One evening near the end of the tour, Taylor invited her on stage for a brief moment during a fan event, introducing her as the person whose compassion had inspired an entire movement online. The crowd erupted into cheers. Laura felt self-conscious, but also moved by the applause. She looked out at the sea of faces lit up by stage lights, and for a moment she recalled her life at the St. Arcadia, where she was mostly invisible behind her concierge desk. She smiled, thinking about how much had changed. Over the thunderous noise, she silently thanked her past self for taking that risk, for deciding to do what was right even though it defied official guidelines. The short speech ended, and she exited the stage, tears shimmering in her eyes. It wasn't just about fame or recognition. It was about honoring a principle she had always believed in, caring for others. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on her losing her job for helping Taylor Swift? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.